And thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about language development, ideally providing you all with some proactive strategies on to support your young ones' development in language. Today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what to expect with language, talk about typical language milestones, and then talk about ways that you can support your child's language. And then at the very end, I will give you some information about any concerns that you might have. So if you are concerned about your child's speech and language development, kind of where to go next. And if you are coming here today because you have concerns, feel free to reach out to me after or let me know that you have concerns, because I would hate for you to have a concern and then it just continue to go on. Let's address it. And then I can refer you on to anyone if I feel like that would be an appropriate next step. But oftentimes as parents, we just wonder, is my child developing typically? What can I do? Am I providing them the best foundation, especially when it comes to speech and language? So my name is Lauren. For those of you that I have not met, my role at Child Care Answers is Family Support Specialist. And so what I do is work one-on-one with families and navigating parenting, whether that's supporting breastfeeding with an infant or helping a kindergartner transition to school, and anywhere in between. So I have a lot of experience in infant toddler development specifically, and I'm also a lactation consultant, so I can provide support there as well. But any struggle or concern that you're having along the parenting journey of a young child, I am here to support you in that journey. I also do a lot of workshops like this, where everything that we do is housed then on YouTube so that you can watch it later and come back to it. And then I do a lot of content development. So if there is a need that you have that we don't have something to fit that need, let us know and we can develop something for you or bring in the expert if we are not the expert. If you do not do so already, follow Child Care Answers on social media. We post on Facebook all of our events. And then on our YouTube channel, we house all of our recordings. So those are really nice to look back on, to send to loved ones or to friends. And then if you ever sign up for a webinar and you're not able to attend the live session, we will always send you the recording. So it's better to sign up even though you know you're not coming, so that you get that recording delivered right to your inbox and you don't have to go searching for it. And then Child Care Answers is part of a larger statewide network of child care resource and referral agencies. So if you are not housed in Marion, Hendricks, or Hamilton County, I can refer you to your local agency. We all do very similar work and we all work with and support each other. So we're all here to help you regardless of where you live in Indiana. So let's get started in talking about young children's language development. So I really wanted to start with this quote to really kind of lay that foundation of really looking at a young child's development of language and the development of their verbal communication skills through the interactions that they have with their caregivers. They can develop some skills outside of that, but really where language becomes fundamental is hearing language, hearing appropriate language, hearing correct language. So of mostly talking to your little child as a human. Baby talk is fine, but we also want to make sure that we're giving them opportunities where they're hearing us converse with them just like this. Like, I see you smiling at me. I see your mouth, or I'm changing your diaper. You pooped, and now we're going to change you so that you feel better. Yep, now you're nice and clean. I see you smiling. So while I have this sing-song voice, I'm using real words and communicating like I would to an adult or an older child. But really the foundation of language happens through the interactions that we have with our children. And it can be just as simple as just talking to them. Both of my kids were super verbal, very young. And some people would ask me like, what did you do special? And I'm like, I just talked to them. Like, that's all I did. I talked about what I was doing, I talked about what they were doing, and I just had conversations with them, even when they weren't conversing back. I love like the 6 to 9 month age when they are just like feeling life, they are living the dream, they are telling you all of the things, and I love to hear about all of the things and then tell them all of the things, and then they're just babbling on back to me about life. And that is one of my favorite stages of development. So a lot of parents wonder, what's typical? What should I expect? What should my child be doing? How many words should my child have? They're starting to stutter. Is that normal? So before I talk about strategies, I really want to talk about what we expect when it comes to young children's speech and language development. And there is a large range of expectations when it comes to young children. You're going to have an 18-month-old who has 4 words, and that's typical. You can also have an 18-month-old who's speaking full sentences, which is also in the range of typical. And your child can be anywhere in between that. So I want a lot of this to be reassurance that your child is where they should be, but also use this as an opportunity to be like, oh, I didn't know that, or I wonder if we should talk to somebody about this. This may validate a concern you have, or this may put your mind at ease that like, okay, my child's good. They should be yelling no at me. Like that is a typical milestone for a toddler. Like that is what I should be expecting. And so as we look at our youngest kiddos, so from 6 months to the time that they're really babbling with expression, all the way until they turn 2, language is booming. And one of the best things that you can do is just talk to them and listen to them and read to them. So for a baby between the ages of 6 months and their first birthday, we expect them to babble. We expect them to make sounds like mama and dada without meaning. They, around age 1, start using mama and dada with meaning. But moms, when they say dada first, it doesn't mean anything, but don't tell dad that. So they start just saying a variety of different sounds and using different letter sounds that they hear. So a child listening to English is going to start babbling those English sounds that they hear. A child who's learning or hearing Spanish is going to start babbling those sounds. And dual language learners, or babies who are learning both at the same time, are babbling both sets of sounds. Their language typically is slower in developing, and that's just because they're learning 2 languages at the same time. So that is not a bad thing, that's a good thing. And so when you look at the number of words that maybe a 2-year-old is saying, you want to take the number of words that they're saying in English and the number of words in their other language, combine those, and then you know kind of how many words they have in general. So some other expectations that I might have for a 6 to 11-month-old is that they're attempting to communicate with actions or gestures. So they're going to look in the direction of something that they're interested in. They're going to begin to point at things. They're going to begin to make some gestures. At the end of kind of between 10 and 12 months, they can begin utilizing some signs and utilizing those to communicate with you. And they're using their own kind of gestures and actions to get your attention based on something that they want, like handing you something, or throwing their cup off of the tray, looking down, looking up at you and going. They're saying like, hey, I just threw that on the floor and it hit the floor. And can you get that for me so that I can throw it back on the floor and see if it hits the floor again? Because I'm learning about gravity and learning that every time I do something, the same thing happens. I'm also learning that when I throw something on the floor and I need it, that you're there to fill that need and give it back to me. And they also try to repeat the sounds that we make, and they begin to say their first word somewhere between 6 and 11 months old. Those words may only make sense to you and make sense to nobody else. And it may not be a real word, but a sound that you know means something. And so that's what we mean by first word. From 12 to 17 months, they're beginning to answer questions non-verbally. So this may mean like, where are your shoes? And they'll go look for them. Or go, can you pick up the car? And they go pick up the car. Or, you know, find me a blueberry. Mama wants a blueberry, and they pick up a blueberry off of their tray. So they're answering and responding to you, just usually without words. They're trying to imitate simple words that they hear. Typically things like mama, dada, ball, dog, tree, things that are meaningful for them. And they usually have a vocabulary of about 4 to 6 words. Their pronunciation is not very clear, and only a baby whose family knows them well or caregivers know them well really understands, for the most part, what they're saying. And then our toddlers in full force from 18 to 23 months, their language is like this, like whoosh, it's taking off. So they are jumping from a 4 to 6 word vocabulary to 50 or more words. Pronunciation is still often unclear, but more and more people are understanding what they're saying. They're beginning to use some 2-word utterances like more milk, and they're beginning to use words like mine. Mine is a word that we want a toddler to learn how to say. Mine and no are 2 big language milestones because they get their needs met in a way that doesn't involve hitting or biting. So we want a toddler to be able to say, that's mine. I'm playing with that. And if anyone knows the toddler property laws, what's mine is mine. If it looks like mine, it's mine. If it's yours, it's mine. If we're playing with a set of materials, they are all mine. And that's just the world that a toddler lives in. And that's developmentally appropriate. So mine is a big word because they have to have ownership of something before they can share it. And ownership is going to develop from 18 months to 36-ish months. So by the time they turn 3, to the point where they've learned that I've owned this and now I can share it with someone. I can give it to somebody else because I know I'll get it back. And they're making a lot of animal sounds and they're asking for common things. And this is the time that we're typically quizzing our young child, like, what does a cow say? What does a dog say? What color is this? And it's our way of testing their knowledge, but also kind of showing them off at the same time. But it's never a good indicator of what they know and what they can say, because oftentimes when we quiz a child, like, what is this? Or what color is this? They look at you like, do you not know what color that is? And they're going to say something or not say something, depending on their personality, to kind of shut you down and move on and be like, I'm not answering your silly questions. So I'll talk about strategies on how to encourage language development that doesn't involve quizzing. So now let's look at our older toddlers and our preschoolers. So the age between 2 and 4, where I have language, I have words, and now I'm beginning to put those words together. So between the ages of 2 and 3, a child has anywhere from 200 to 1,000 or more words. And obviously, the closer they get to 3, the more words they're going to have. And they're beginning to use sounds that are more kind of understood by people around them. They're still maybe really inaccurate and still maybe leaving off ending sounds, but people are starting to understand a little bit more about what they're saying. And between the ages of 2 and 3, they're still answering simple questions, but they're answering it verbally. And you may also see a sudden onset of stuttering at this age. And this is truly because they have so much going on in their head and it's not coming out as quickly as they want it to come out. So they have all these things going on and it's just not coming out as quickly as they want, as they're still developing language. So that is typical to see this sudden onset of stuttering around age 2, and it usually goes away by age 4. Typically sooner, but by age 4 is when we kind of expect it to go away. And then between the ages of 3 and 4, they're now talking well enough for strangers to understand most of the time. They're having a lot of fun with language. They're playing with language. They're recognizing language absurdities, like, is that an elephant on your head? They're laughing at things. They're making jokes. They're asking a lot of questions. And they want to know so many answers. Why? They want to know how things work, and they're very curious about that. At this stage, you have your child who is going to speak like this everywhere, or you're going to have your child who only speaks like this at home or when they're with a caregiver that they like. That they may be very shy and clam up at school or in other settings, but then be blah, 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 blah at home. And that is typical. That really just goes back to temperament. And by age 4, children use most speech sounds, but many will still distort some of those difficult sounds, like your R's and your S's and your L's, your THs, those types of things. And those skills may not be mastered fully until between the ages of 7 or 8. So if they're still saying things incorrectly, or they're not able to say their R's or their L's or their S's, that is typical. And they usually will have those skills fully mastered by age 7 or 8. So Rachel says that her son has been making a lot of hand gestures that seem like signing, but it isn't a sign that we taught him. It seems like this is part of his babbling. Not a question, just an aha moment. Yeah, and it could be a sign that, or a gesture that like he has developed on his own to mean something, or he may just be a little guy that as he gets older uses his hands a lot to communicate. But he would probably benefit a lot by signs because he likes to use his hands. And I'm sure after speaking to you before that you have already incorporated some signs into your routine. But I love just how animated that age is in general, and how they have so much to say and they want to share. So thank you for sharing that. I miss that stage of development with my kiddos. And then between the ages of 4 and 5, and then sending them off to kindergarten, language is continuing to get a lot more complex. They understand complex sentences. They understand spatial concepts like behind, next to, under. So like, hey, your shoes are under the couch. Like they understand what that means. Or look behind you. It's behind you, or tomorrow and today, and those concepts that are a little bit more abstract to a younger child. They're still making some speech mistakes in pronunciation, especially with harder, more difficult words like hippopotamus, spaghetti, things that they say in a way that we love and we want to hold on to, and we don't want them to ever say spaghetti. We want them to say biscotti forever. And it's just, it keeps them still a baby in our mind to be like, oh, you're still my little baby, as they're getting a little bit older, which I appreciate and love as a mom of a 3.5-year-old. And they're starting to use some irregular past tense verbs like ran, fell. They understand when it's like, I fell down earlier today, or I ran to get the ball instead of I run to get the ball. I am running and I ran are both in their vocabulary, and they, for the most part, understand the use of them. And then our 5-year-olds. So as they're getting ready to head off to kindergarten, they're understanding time sequencing, like first, second, third. First, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. It's language that I use with all children, but a 5-year-old understands it in the way that I can wait for something to happen because I know it's going to happen. You told me first we're going to have lunch and then we're going to go out for ice cream. And so then I'm going to stop asking 5,000 times when we're getting ice cream, because I know after lunch we're going to go get ice cream. Where your 3-year-old is like, are we getting ice cream? Are we getting ice cream? When are we getting ice cream? So we're going to get ice cream. Can we go get ice cream? And you're like, we are after lunch. First lunch, then ice cream. And they're like, but when are we getting ice cream? Where your 5-year-old is probably going, after lunch, mom said after lunch, because they understand that time sequence. They also understand later and tomorrow. So no more can you be like, yeah, we'll do that tomorrow. Because tomorrow they remember that yesterday you told them that we'll do that tomorrow. Where the 2-year-old like totally forgets later that day that you said anything about doing it later. They can carry out 3-step directions fairly well. So I need you to go upstairs, brush your teeth, put your pajamas on, and then start reading a book. For the most part, they can carry out that sequence with little reminders. They are starting to play with language more by like rhyming, engaging in back and forth conversations that have give and take. So before this, it might stop after like 1 or 2 back and forth, and this continues, like to really have an in-depth conversation about something that they are interested in, not something that we're interested in. They have to be interested in it. And they're putting together more complex sentences, more compound sentences. Language is, again, just becoming a lot more complex. And they're using their imagination to create stories in a way that as an adult, sometimes we may see it as lying. But to a 5-year-old, there is no maliciousness to their stories. They're just playing with their imagination. And so if we're seeing this at 8, 9, 10, okay, they're starting to kind of try to mess with us or to lie to get out of something. But this is truly because they're using their imagination and they're just trying to play and create stories and make things extravagant. As a parent, when we see these, we're like, oh, okay, we're good. We're good. My kid should be asking 1,000 why questions in a day. My kid should be talking my ear off, or my kid only has 5 words and that's typical for their age. Just because the girl next door has 35 doesn't mean that my kid isn't developing typically. I think it's really easy to compare young children, especially when it comes to speech. And there is just such a range of typical. So for the rest of the time together, we are going to talk about strategies that we can use at home that really support the development of our child's language and communication skills. And so here is kind of the laundry list of all of the things that we'll do, but I will go through them all individually. So the first one is to use signs and gestures. So whether we're using baby signs or we're creating our own signs and gestures to communicate things, children who have signs alongside of language do develop language quicker than young children who do not. So as the baby sign kind of mentality started, there was a lot of pushback to be like, whoa, it's going to delay speech because they're using signs. And what they found is that it's actually not true. It's the opposite. It encourages language development and it boosts language development. So what you'll find is a baby starts using signs before they have the ability to verbally communicate. It's going to cut down on stress for the baby, but it's also going to cut down on parental stress because you know what your child needs. They've told you, I'm all done, or I need more, or I want milk. They're able to kind of communicate before they have the words to do so. As the words come, they begin to use the sign alongside of the word. So instead of just signing more, as a baby, I might say saying mo, 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 to say like more. I need more of that. And usually it's like a mo, 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 like I need that, give me more of that. And we see that a lot at meal times. And then as they gain more skills, they drop the sign and they just use the word. So we usually find that they drop the sign and just use the word by age 2 for most children. And signs do help them develop more words earlier on. So here are some of my kind of go-to first signs. I know that please and thank you are often on the high end of people's lists, but they're not the first couple of signs that I typically introduce. And that's because I believe, and a lot of research shows that manners like please and thank you are better learned through modeling, through us using those with them than forcing them. And a baby doesn't need to be signing please in order to get another cracker. They can learn that later. So it's just not one of the top signs that I do from the very beginning. So these are the 8 signs that I typically use first. These are not true ASL. Some baby signs are true ASL and some are not. And your baby or your young child is going to develop their own variation of some of these signs, or you might decide to use the sign for eat for anything related to food, and that's fine. So the first 2 signs that I do during feeding time, basically introducing them at the time that I introduce solids, is more and all done. So for more, they usually go like this with their fingers, or they might kind of point to one hand, which is actually another sign, but it doesn't matter because you know what it means, or they might clap to say more, depending on what it is that they want more of and how excited they are. So that is more, and then this is all done. I'll try to do it down here so you can see it because my background's blurred. So this is all done. So of using signs, do you want more, giving them one more goldfish, more, one more goldfish, kind of doing behavior modification techniques to teach them signs. And then when they're starting to throw stuff off their tray, to say, oh, you look like you're all done. So always using the sign all done alongside of the word so that they begin to learn like, oh, I can do this to tell you that I'm all done. I don't have to chuck my plate across the room to tell you. Anything related to sleep, tired, or bed, I use the sleep sign, which is, I mean, the most obvious sleep sign. If you didn't know that that was the sign for sleep, you would still do it. And then my favorite sign to use, just because I think it's hilarious and cute, is milk. So it's basically a fist like you're milking a cow that you just squeeze. Do you want more milk? So every time that I'm using any language around milk, and then if you want, you can use that sign for just to kind of signal drink. This is the sign for drink, but if your child knows milk, I'm kind of just using it for every type of drink. And then eat. And then these are 3 kind of social emotional words or behavioral signs that I like to introduce with young children. Number 1 being help. And this is one of the signs that I really recommend introducing to an older child who is struggling to verbally communicate. It's the ability to say, like, I need help. So when you see your child struggling to maybe put on their shoes or to build a block tower or whatever it may be, to say, it looks like you need help. You say, help me. And then you're giving them the words in the sign to say, like, I need help. I don't have to throw myself on the floor and have a tantrum to tell you that I'm struggling right now. Because toddlers climb down. And what I like about down is that when you're out and about, once they learn this sign and they're starting to climb on something, all you have to do is say their name and use the sign. You don't even have to say down, and they know immediately what that means. And then when you're holding your young child and they just kind of try to fly out of your arms because they want to get down and that's not safe, they can tell you down before they have the words to do so, so that they're not just kind of flailing backwards and being like, put me down, and then you almost drop them. They're actually communicating with you that I'm ready to be put down now. And then stop. I like stop much better than I like the sign no. This is no. I don't like the sign no because it's almost like it's telling you to like stop talking, like be quiet. Like I wouldn't want someone making that sign to me. But stop is another one of those signs that when you're out and about, all you have to do is show that sign is stop. You don't have to say anything and they know. I still tend to use the sign with my 3- and 7-year-old. And it's something that they can use with their peers. So I love when a 2-year-old looks at their friend and makes that sign like stop. They're telling you to walk away. They're telling you that they don't like that. And so it gives them the power, especially when you have siblings, for the younger one to be able to stand up for themselves and communicate and get their needs met. So those are kind of those top signs. Another strategy, and this is something that I've mentioned already, is really just the power of chatting and talking. So taking turns chatting back and forth with each other, even when all your baby is doing is babbling, even when your 7-year-old is telling you all about Zelda on the Switch and you're just like, you can't hear it anymore because it's been 4 hours of Zelda talk. Chat, have conversations back and forth. Push yourself to respond more than, yeah, okay, because you're not really listening if you're responding that way, but respond in a way that gets them to continue this back and forth conversation. Tell me more about that. So that's how it went. Oh, I didn't know that could happen. What do you think might happen next? That really gets them to think or to talk. Listen to what they're saying by imitating their coos, their babbles, or their words. Kind of this repeat back to them. Oh, I hear you say ba, 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 ba. Or I hear that you went to the store with daddy. That sounds fun. Did you find anything at the store? Even when they just say the word store. And then reply to questions asked. And I didn't fix this slide. Reply to questions and ask your own. Again, just reply to their questions and keep asking questions. And expand and extend their language. So in addition to chatting, expand what they're saying. So modeling bigger sentences for them. So your child might say 2 cat, and you say you have 2 cats on your shirt. So that you're repeating back and extending kind of what they are telling you to their capacity. Use new words when talking with your child, using a variety of different words. So at snack time, you can use words like good, healthy, yummy, crunchy, round, just a variety of different words that helps build their vocabulary. And expanding on their words and gestures. So when they're pointing at something, look in the direction and say like, oh, I see you pointing at the dog. There is a dog over there. The dog says, woof, woof. Or as you're pointing at something in a book of talking about what they see, or when they're making all of these gestures and they're talking of saying like, wow, you must be really excited. Your hands are in the air. I can tell you're excited because of that. So you're pointing at and responding to their gestures. Additionally, talk to your child about what you're doing. Tell them what's going to happen next so that they know what to expect. So if you're cleaning the room, I'm cleaning up the floor. We have a lot of toys on the floor. Can you help me? This bucket, all the trucks go in this bucket. Where are all the trucks? Oh, you found the trucks. Oh, where did the trucks go? I see you found one. Remember, it goes in the bucket. You put it in the bucket. Yay! So that you're really this play-by-play announcer to what they're doing and what you're doing. When you're looking at books, talk about the pictures and really talk about kind of every step of what you're doing along the way. I do this a lot at the grocery store, is that I'm like, what do we need? What's on our list? I forget what we need today. They're not holding the list. They have no idea what's on the list. But it just keeps them hearing language and then giving them that option to use language themselves. And ask a lot of open-ended questions, avoiding really this, like, what is this? What color is this? Can you point to this? Because when we quiz them, it shuts them down. They're like, nah, I'm not playing your games. If you don't know what color banana is, you got your own problems. Meh. But if we say like, oh, can you find all the blue blocks? You know that they know the color blue, and you've quizzed them without them knowing you're quizzing them, but at the same time, you're really getting them to think, which is the bigger thing that you're wanting rather than just seeing what they know. So instead of saying, what's this? And we all do it, we're all going to continue to do it. But every time I quiz my child, I'm like, how could I have said that differently? Like, I'm just trying to like show off their skills here. Like, what could I do differently next time? Because I shouldn't have asked that question. Because typically my daughter looks at me like, I don't know why you don't know what color this is. Like, you're an adult. You don't know that this is yellow. So instead of saying things like, what do you think's going to happen? Or I wonder. I respond a lot to questions by asking questions back. I'm not going to just tell you, why there's a sun in the sky. I want to know what you think, and then let's solve this problem together, or let's look this up together. Ask questions like, where did the dog go? If the dog goes into the other room, or hide something under a blanket and go, oh no, where did the blue car go? Of encouraging them to find things that are hidden. But of really just kind of asking questions, asking those open-ended questions that get your child thinking. Another great way of supporting their language development is reading and singing. So the more language they hear, the more language they're going to end up using. And the more repetition there is in language, the more quickly they develop it. So read books that repeat songs and phrases like Brown Bear, Brown Bear. Encourage them to say part of the story or retell the story to you. Encourage them to hold the book and flip through it. My 3-year-old is at the point where she basically reads books to us by repeating back the story that she's heard us read to her a million times. There are good books and there are not great books. You probably have some books at home that are great books that you're like, yeah, why don't you pick that one? I like that book. For my husband, it's Go Dog Go. There's other books on your shelf that you're like, please don't pick that book. Please don't pick that book. So just to know that those books that aren't great, you're not stuck reading the words on that book. Make up your own story. Just talk about the pictures. If your child is disengaging, don't feel like you have to finish the story. Book time and reading time should be fun. Everyone should enjoy it. Kids learn through repetition, so you're going to read Brown Bear, 1,000 times, but it should be fun and enjoyable for all. And then read the world around you. Point out signs, point out symbols, talk about what those symbols mean. My daughter knows the sign for Starbucks means cake pop and mama's iced tea. So they begin to pick up on kind of these signs around their environment. Letters are shapes or signs to them until they really learn that they have more meaning beyond just being a symbol. And typically they begin to develop awareness of letters that are important to them, like the first letter of their name, or M for mom, or D for dad. They begin to recognize those meaningful symbols first before they learn all the other symbols. And be a translator. So if other adults are having difficulty understanding your child's speech, which is typical through age 3, help be a translator. So give your child a chance to say what they have to say, and then kind of repeat it back. So your child could be going on and on and on about this truck. You know exactly what your child's saying, but grandma has no idea. The lady at the grocery store has no idea. Of kind of repeating it back and translating. Ben is telling you that this is his new truck. He's really excited about it. So giving them that option to speak first and then repeating it back so that others are understanding and aware of what your child is saying too, so that they can also engage in conversations with your child. And alongside of that is to really give them the words to use. So giving them the words to use in the moment, instead of just saying, use your words. Use your words is a phrase that implies that they have the words to use. And if they had the words to use and they had the ability to pull those words out of their vocabulary and use them in the moment, they would have used them. So give them a chance to use their words in a way that's meaningful. So a way of saying this is, I don't understand when you're pointing and going, I don't know what that means. Are you telling me that you're hungry and you want a snack? Oh, say snack, please. And so that you're giving them that option to then use the word to communicate. Even if you know exactly what they mean, you give them the words to use. When my daughter is trying to get down and she's flailing, instead of saying, can you put me down, please? I will hold her tighter and say, oh, it looks like you're trying to get down. Would you like to get down? And then she says something, either it's like, yes, I want to get down, or she'll say like, I'm like, oh, just tell mommy down. I want to get down. And then she'll repeat, I want to get down, and I put her down. This is also helpful in peer relationships, sibling relationships at school. Give them the words. Tell him you don't like that. Instead of swooping in and solving their problem for them, of giving them the word to use in that moment. Tell him, don't hit me. I don't like that. Or tell him, you can have this when I'm done. Tell him, stop. I have to clearly tell my daughter to tell her brother to back off a lot, because those were my tell him ideas. My son is very handsy and my daughter is not, so it causes a little bit of conflict in the house when he just wants to be all over her, and she hits him instead of saying like, you're too much, buddy, I need you to back up. So we work on these a lot at home. And last but not least, as far as our strategies go, is to really avoid correcting mistakes. As I talked about expectations, we know that there's going to be speech errors. That's normal. We expect that. Just like when I'm learning how to walk, I'm going to fall 1,000 times before I can walk across the room without falling. There are going to be mistakes within speech. And so we want to avoid correcting our child's mistake when it comes to speech, so that they don't begin to kind of internalize that or stop communicating. So instead of correcting it, you simply repeat back the phrase that they were trying to say correctly. So maybe they're saying, I want to go to Gamma house. So you just repeat back and you say, oh, you want to go to Grandma's house. Let's call her and see if she's home. Or, we have spaghetti for dinner. You say, sure, we can have spaghetti for dinner. And simply just repeating it back to them without correcting them, just so that they hear it the correct way. But they're not then less likely to want to communicate because they feel like they've made a mistake. And I know that sometimes just chatting with a child who doesn't chat back seems awkward, especially out in public. But get over the awkwardness. It is so beneficial to their development to just have somebody converse with them. When I was teaching infants, we would have all sorts of conversations, and especially when I was the only teacher in the room, we would talk about all sorts of things because no one was looking at me like, oh, she's talking to the babies. They don't say anything back. And I wish then that I didn't care what they thought. But it was so great to just be able to have these conversations with a group of babies who weren't saying any words back, but they knew what I was talking about and they had their opinions. And then it's fun to kind of pretend that you know what they're saying back to you. One of the things that comes up with speech and language is I am concerned about my child's development. What should I do? And here are kind of 4 steps or 4 things that you can consider if you do have a concern over your child's speech and language development. Number 1 is utilizing the CDC milestone checklists. They're free, they're online, there's an app you can download. And in addition to speech, it also provides you milestones for your child's physical development, their cognitive development, and their social emotional development. So I like to use that kind of as a good baseline to really see, are there concerns, or is my child typical, or do I just need to talk to my child more? It gives you a really good baseline, and it also lists out kind of developmental red flags. Like if your child is doing X, Y, and Z, or not doing X, Y, and Z at this age, you may want to talk to your child's pediatrician. If you have concerns, don't hesitate ever to reach out to your pediatrician. I am a resource to you as well, but your pediatrician can be a good place to refer you on to a speech language pathologist if that's what comes of it. And then additionally, in order to get evaluated for our services, for children under 3, there is First Steps, who is basically the early intervention program in Indiana that supports developmental delays in children with special needs. So if you have concerns and your child is under 3, you can fill out the referral form for First Steps online. You don't even have to go through a pediatrician, and the evaluation is free. The worst thing that happens is they say, your child's totally fine, you don't qualify. Or, yeah, thanks for calling. Your child qualifies for 6 months of speech therapy. By then, they should be caught up and fine. The earlier that we intervene with kiddos, the better the outcomes are, and the shorter the intervention window is. After age 3, then the evaluation and supports would come through your local school system. So before age 3, it's First Steps. After age 3, it's a school system. I know sometimes it is a tricky system to navigate. If you have questions of who to go to, just let me know, or let your pediatrician know. And when in doubt, get an evaluation done, because you'd rather be safe than sorry and catch something early or be reassured that everything's fine than wait. And that's true really for any developmental concern, not just speech. So lots of different ways to get a hold of me. But again, just Lauren G at childcareanswers.com.